so large in scope that they are actually outside the scope of authority of this commission. Therefore, this commission is looking at the issue of whether there's adequate law enforcement in the unincorporated village of Whiteclay for the reissuance of these licenses. And so with that admonishment, that's what we're limited to, is there adequate law enforcement, because that's the statutory duty and the authority of the commission. Okay? Anything further before we begin?
Yes, Mr. Whiteclay, I'd like to renew my motion to dismiss. I'll state it briefly. Each of these retailers has sought renewal of an existing license issued by this commission. They're each entitled to the renewal privilege as that privilege has been defined by the Nebraska Supreme Court. In the absence of a showing by the commission that the retailers did not meet one of the renewal requirements set forth in Nebraska Revised Statute 53-13502 and 53-135, the commission cannot demand the retailers submit a long-form application. Such applications are submitted under protest. The Nebraska Supreme Court has held that 53-135 and 53-135.02 only require that a licensee seeking renewal of the license demonstrate that the licensee is qualified to receive a license, that the premises for which renewal of the license is sought are the same premises designated in the initial license, and the premises remain suitable for the sale of alcoholic beverages in accordance with the initially issued license. In order to establish whether a licensee is qualified to renew a license, those are the only factors that are to be considered by this commission. The claim here is that the adequacy of law enforcement is one of the requirements of 135 or 53-135 or 53-135.02. However, the only mention of adequacy of law enforcement is found in 53-132 open paren 3. The Nebraska Supreme Court has held that Nebraska Revised Statute 53-132 describes the general standard by which initial applicants are judged to be fit to obtain a liquor license and to follow the rules and regulations that bear on license holders. The statute, however, is not a rule or regulation which can be violated by a current licensee or subject to licensee's non-renewal or cancellation of the powers given to this commission. As such, requiring testimony regarding these matters is in conflict with the rulings of the Nebraska Supreme Court, specifically Grand Island Latin Club Inc. versus Nebraska Liquor Control Commission 251 Nebraska 61 open paren 1996. In support of the renewal of the motion, I would re-offer the evidence offered at the time of the hearing, which was there were 7 exhibits. One was my affidavit, one was the affidavit of Daniel Bringer, one was the affidavit of Doug Sanford, the affidavit of Jason Schwarting, the affidavit of Steve Sanford, and the affidavit of Stuart Posey.
Members of the Commission, we oppose the motion to dismiss. We believe it's clear that you have statutory authority to both order the long-form application, to require this hearing to occur and to conduct this hearing. We think that authority is conferred upon you by Section 53-116 in the Nebraska statutes, which gives you plenary control over the enforcement of the Nebraska Liquor Control Act and all matters relating to licensing and relicensure. 53-116.01 expands that authority and is specific about it. Section 53-132.02 of the statutes governing the commission expressly provide that there is no statutory or vested right in the renewal of a liquor license. That's a matter for you to consider at the time of renewal. It's a matter for you to consider in terms of what constitutes the public interest at the time of renewal. Our evidence will focus principally on the question of law enforcement because you made it clear that's what you want to hear. I oppose the motion to dismiss. I want to state briefly that we believe your authority and indeed responsibility is actually broader than law enforcement, but in order to respect your focus on that issue and to make sure this hearing is as efficient as it can be, we'll offer some evidence at the end of our presentation by way of offers of proof only. I'll simply mark exhibits, I'll summarize what they are, I'll put them in the record, and Mr. Rupi has also already given us rulings on those. So my record making will be brief on those matters out of respectfully request that you overrule the motion to dismiss. And I might add this, council and I talked about the exhibits. I have no objection to the reoffer of the 7 exhibits. I suggest that we stipulate, if the commission would permit us to, that the exhibit numbers be identified as exhibits 169 through 176, so we can keep our numbering the court reporter's already done for us. And I can also tell you we're not going to use all of those exhibits in between.
Thank you. Kelly, you said there were some other...
Actually, we need 168 at the start.
168, okay, thank you.
Do we have those?
Yes, they were submitted. I always check with Kelly because, you know, numbers hurt my head. I will accept the reoffer of those exhibits as the renumbering. They were previously offered and received in response to the motion to dismiss. I'm going to overrule the motion to dismiss. I believe Mr. Dom is correct under the general plenary powers, as well as 53-135, which gives the commission the appeal to long form after showing was made at our November hearing, and therefore I'm going to deny that. Council, once again, the lovely heating and cooling in this building is inconsistent at best. I will be doffing my jacket later on. Please note to everyone else is eligible to do so as well. Comfort controls over appearance in this regard. As well as the preliminary matter?
I do have another preliminary matter. I'm offering exhibit number 175, a copy of the Commission's public meeting agenda for November 1st, 2016.
No objection.
Any objections? No. Exhibit 175, received.
And I would ask the hearing officer to take notice that during the public meeting agenda on November 1st, 2016, that no public comments were taken with respect to item number 4 on the 18th with respect to request for a long-term application.
I will take you administrative hearing notice of that hearing.
Mayor, my objection to that.
I'm sorry.
I believe that that's a matter of that qualifies for judicial notice under the statutes of case law.
Well, I believe that a commission state judicial notice is on record and some history in that regard, and so I will do so.
And I'd ask you to take official notice that on all matters on the public meeting agenda for the Control Commission each month, that you do not consider them to be contested cases, and you do not take that.
I will do so. That just for the record, our policy is following. The commission wears many hats at a time, as far as the public entity, and people will come to us at that time and make comments. However, once it becomes a contested case, any testimony in regard to that, those cases is prohibited. Yes, I would use the word I would answer. And that is our policy, and that's how we handle it in this case.
Mayor, the same objections, Mr. Ruth. I don't believe those are matters that are appropriate for judicial notice, unless what you stated is part of the Commission's rules and regulations that affect that as well.
I will go ahead and I will take notice of the Commission can't take notice of its own records. And also for the record, Mr. Snyder, that was a policy change that happened as a result of a case hearing, and we changed our internal policy with those hearings based upon that case. In compliance with the
I'd ask you to take official notice of the rules and regulation with respect to the items that you can consider during the public meeting agenda. I don't have the statutory number. And then finally, can you take official notice?
Any objection to taking official notice?
No objection.
It's just, I I took that as requesting judicial notice of the rules and regulations of this commission. Is that correct? I don't have an objection to that.
So I was just going to objection last time, Commissioner. Now you should have them in there. I'll take judicial notice of the rules and regulations of the commission.
And finally, I asked the hearing officer to take official notice of the known items that were considered by the Liquor Commission on November 1st, 2016, were the items that are listed in November 2nd, 2016, that were requiring these bond forms, which includes the transcript of testimony before the General Affairs Committee in a interim study hearing in October 2016, as well as an email that we had received from the State Patrol regarding law enforcement hours.
No objection to that request. I do request that the items identified by council be specifically selected, identified, marked with an exhibit number and provided to the reporter so they can be part of that.
They are part of the commission's file.
I do have an objection to that. Again, that is certainly not a matter that is proper for judicial notice. There's also the information that will be marked and offered apparently is full of hearsay, unsworn testimony. It lacks foundation, and the issues aren't relevant to the renewal of a license.
I'm going to overrule the objection for the following. The policy the commission has in filing a long form, especially a long form, was created after the Grand Island Club case, in response to the Grand Island Club case. It was a process created by my predecessor at the Attorney General's office, now Judge McCann. After the commission treats those hearings akin to a probable cause standard, basically, is there information to ask for a long form? The long form is used as a primary investigative tool of the commission. There's not a decision made one way or the other at that time, but rather is there enough for further inquiry? And therefore, I'm going to overrule the objection and receive. And we mark. We have to separate out marking those. What would they be? What numbers would we get to?
We're up to 176. We would start with.
So 176 would be the transcript of the General Affairs Committee, and 177 would be the letter from Captain Jenkins.
Sorry, what were they?
176 would be the transcript from the General Affairs Committee interim study. Is that correct, Melissa? And 177 would be a letter from the Nebraska State Patrol Investigative Service Captain in response to a request from the Commission regarding Nebraska law enforcement hours spent in the
Sorry for the delay.
Yeah. She requested an interim study.
Sorry for the delay.
No problem. My main job is to be the primary shepherd of witnesses and exhibits. So.
Did you receive those?
Yeah, they received them over Mr. Snyder's objection on hearsay, and
Have you received those for all purposes, Mr. Wu?
are you offering for a limited purpose?
I'm offering it for the, specifically with respect to the transcript testimony. It relates only to the statements of the Sheridan County Commissioner, Mr. Anderson, regarding enforcement in Whiteclay. And then with respect to, so I'm offering it for that purpose and for your consideration and requesting law enforcement.
Okay.
So not to prove the matters today. The same thing goes with Captain Jenkins' email to you regarding the
No limitation shows objection.
Well, I'm not quite sure what the limitation was, but if any of it is to be considered for the truth of the matter asserted, I object from hearsay foundation.
Yeah, and again, I'm not offering it for that purpose. It's for the purpose of the long-form application.
With that limitation, I'm going to accept them. It was, as I said, the long forms are primarily, is there enough evidence, is there probable cause to ask for long form? And in that reference, if not being offered the truth of the matter asserted, I will receive the evidence. Any further response? Any other further preliminary matters before we begin, gentlemen?
None for the protesters.
No.
Mr. Tomlin?
We'll call Tatooine Means.
Oh, yes.
And for the record, we waive opening statement.
Just for one thing, we have previously marked 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are the files of the commission, and all pleas, doc, and correspondence. They are being offered not for the truth of the matter asserted in any of the issues there, but being offered for a completeness of the record and for a for jurisdictional grounds. Either any objection to the sheet of the commission files, what they do is they start with the request for long form, and they contain all pleas and basically the transcript is what primarily it is.
I have no objection for jurisdictional questions. I would have the same objection for anything contained therein for the truth of the matter asserted.
We receive for jurisdictional grounds. Ms. John, I'm assuming you have no objection?
None.
All right. Sorry about that. That's why I have them up to make sure I don't screw it up. Please raise your right hand, Ms. Smith.
What do you do? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Just
Thank
looking
you.
into the microphone.
And one thing I'll admonish everybody, the legislature has seen fit to have all these mics on one single line, so we can make sure we don't talk over each other. It's going to make the fellow's job a lot easier, and part of my main job is to keep the court reporter happy.
May I proceed?
Yes.
I've tried to rename you a couple times, so I apologize. Would you give us your full name, please?
Tatewin Means.
I need you to spell it, please.
Tatewin, Means, Means.
Where do you reside?
I live in Rapid City, South Dakota.
What is your occupation?
I'm the Attorney General for the Oglala Sioux Tribe.
Is that a position to which you were appointed?
Yes, it's a politically appointed position by our tribal council for the Oglala local nation.
As the Attorney General of the tribe, are you the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the tribe?
Yes, so my responsibility involves the ensurance that all of our tribal laws are adhered to and enforced by our tribal law enforcement. So the Oglala Sioux Tribe is a separate sovereign from the state of South Dakota, from the federal government. We have a tribal constitution. We have our own distinct body of tribal law that our tribal service enforces. Much of our funding for our tribal courts, my office, the Attorney General's office, tribal law enforcement comes from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, federal program, and the tribe wholly manages those programs through our tribal government. So we have a tribal government structure with a tribal council that's made of 20 members representing 9 different districts. So our reservation spans over 2 million acres. There's 3 South Dakota counties within our reservation, and we border the Nebraska border. And in fact, there's some tribal land that's in Nebraska, and that's where we have a nursing home that was just built and in operation now. That's on the Nebraska side of the state boundary.
And is that nursing home actually in Sheridan County?
Yes, it is.
And is it actually located to the south along Highway 87 of the locations of the 4 applicants for renewal of liquor licenses in this proceeding?
Yes, it is.
I want to ask a few questions about you personally, a few questions more about your responsibilities as the Attorney General, and then some questions that are specific about these matters. Let's let the Commission get to know you a little bit. What is your formal education after high school?
So I graduated from Stanford University in Stanford, California, with a bachelor's in environmental engineering and a minor in comparative studies in race and ethnicity. I then went to the University of Minnesota Law School, where I received my Juris Doctorate with a concentration in human rights law. I also have a master's degree in Lakota Leadership and Management from Oglala Lakota College.
So your baccalaureate degree is in environmental engineering at Stanford. Did you practice engineering?
I did. I worked for Oglala Lakota College right after my undergraduate degree in an environmental laboratory. We started an environmental laboratory for water quality testing on the reservation, and we were the first tribally located laboratory that became EPA certified to conduct E. coli testing on our reservation water supply.
How long did you practice engineering before you decided to turn to the law?
For 5 years.
And then at the end of 5 years, did you make an election to go to law school?
Yes, I decided that the level of change that I hope to see for our nation, for our people, for our systems, would require a law degree to get some of that done. So I made the choice to go to law school and come back and serve my people.
Are you a member of the bar of the state of South Dakota?
Yes, I am.
Fully licensed to practice law there like any other lawyer?
Yes.
And do you also have bar membership requirements for your courts, the courts of your nation?
Yes, I do.
And are you a member of that bar?
Yes, I am.
Do you hold memberships in any other bars of other states or Indian nations?
Indian Nation, yes. Easton, Wapaton, Dakota Oyate, it's a reservation in South Dakota there as well, and Cheyenne River.
All right. And so at least one of those would join your tribal territory or land, is that correct?
Well, they're located throughout South Dakota. There's 9 reservations.
All right. So let's talk about your duties then. Are you the chief prosecutor?
Yes, I am.
Are you responsible for enforcing the law?
Yes.
Do you make the decisions about who will be prosecuted?
I make those decisions along with my staff. I have a staff of 8 total. We average about 4,500 criminal cases a year, and I'm the only licensed attorney in my office. However, there are 4 lay prosecutors that I oversee, and we are responsible for all the criminal prosecutions for the tribe. We also do civil litigation. We are responsible for involuntary commitment procedures for mental health issues, substance abuse issues, those that are afflicted with those types of issues. And we do child protection cases, Indian Child Welfare Act cases from other jurisdictions.
So you serve in multiple capacities like the Attorney General of the state or of the United States?
Correct. It's very similar.
All right. Do you have responsibility for working with and as the chief law enforcement officer overseeing a professional police force?
Yes.
And can you tell us about that police force? First of all, what is the staffing for the police force?
Right. So it's budgeted for about...
Hold on one second. Mr. Rupp, I'm going to enter an objection. This information has been the motion in limine in this regard about anything with regard to issues on the Pine Ridge Reservation is irrelevant and certainly not related to law enforcement in Nebraska.
Mr. Rupp, it will be very directly connected to law enforcement in Nebraska in just a moment. This is a foundational question.
I'm going to allow it, and I believe that the witness is, as the chief law enforcement officer, able to talk about perhaps law enforcement concerns they have with the ignored, but I would caution Mr. Donnelly to sort of lead it to the issue of law enforcement in likely immediately surrounding areas.
Well, let me thank you. I appreciate that. Let's start with describe your police force for us.
So there's budgeted for about 45 tribal officers for our entire reservation, but right now we are at 25 officers, and at any given time there are 8 on shift, and that's again for our entire reservation. So we're very limited in the amount of law enforcement are able to respond.
So that would be 8 officers on duty for 2 million acres of land?
Correct.
And for how many people who live in that area?
There's over 40,000 residents on the reservation.
40,000? So in Nebraska terms, you'd be the equivalent of Platte County, for example, and you may not know that. All right. Now, about proximity. Does your land abut Whiteclay, the unincorporated community of Whiteclay, Nebraska?
Yes.
And are you generally familiar with Whiteclay?
Yes.
Is it an area that you see and travel through on a regular basis?
Yes, and there are many, so it's 1 mile south of the town of Pine Ridge, it's 1 mile within walking distance, and our Justice Center is literally about 200 meters from Whiteclay, the town. And that's where all of our court proceedings happen. Our jail facility is located just meters away from Whiteclay. Many residents in Pine Ridge, people that work in Pine Ridge, go to Whiteclay during the day for lunch, provide business to the local area businesses there.
Does your law enforcement responsibility require that you have interaction with matters that occur in Whiteclay on a regular basis?
Well, that would be ideal. In my position, we have developed very collaborative relationships with all the surrounding jurisdictions. So we have Pennington County, Fall River, Bennett County, all surrounding our reservation from the South Dakota side. But in my tenure as the Attorney General, I've been there nearly 5 years now. There's been no collaborative relationship with Sheridan County on the Nebraska side. And because this relationship is so tenuous about the liquor sales, it's historical because of the tribe's position on the alcohol sales in Whiteclay. And our reservation is a dry reservation, so there's no alcohol sold on our reservation. It's been a non-existent collaboration. So for our law enforcement, I know that they reach out to Sheridan County. Sometimes there's chases that go either way, and there's some communication in that regard. But sit-down collaborations to figure out how we can strategize to provide more effective law enforcement in Whiteclay, it doesn't happen. I mean, there are reports that we get in my office that I have no jurisdiction over, so I can't intervene and help our tribal residents, our families, because of sexual assaults that are happening, physical assaults, murders.
Object on foundation. There's no evidence of this happening in Whiteclay. I'm not sure if she's talking about the reservation in Whiteclay, but if there is, then we should have specifics and not general allegations of these crimes. And it violates your order on the motion in limine, particularly paragraph 4 of my motion in limine, which asked you to limit or eliminate any testimony, evidence, or opinions, lay or expert regarding the Pine Ridge Reservation, societal issues of Pine Ridge Reservation and its inhabitants, any link between the sale of alcohol and fetal alcohol syndrome, the laws and regulations of the tribe, statistics in any way related to the Pine Ridge Reservation, the presentation of records from the Pine Ridge Hospital, the impact of the sale of alcohol in jail and demand services and social services and law enforcement in the Pine Ridge Reservation. And that particular part of my motion is sustained.
Well, first of all, it's painfully obvious that the law enforcement agency a few hundred feet north of these applicants and across the state line serves a population dramatically larger than Sheridan County, about 8 times as large. It's a professional force. It has a professional prosecutor who is appearing before you. He's prepared to tell you about how the things that happen in Whiteclay affect both Whiteclay, the facilities of the tribe that lie north and south of the applicants in Nebraska and in South Dakota, cause a crime to occur in each state and to migrate across the state line in each direction and debilitate the people she's obligated to serve and protect. To suggest that that's not relevant would be like suggesting that Iowa should ignore Omaha when it considers law enforcement issues in Council Bluffs, or Nebraska should ignore Colorado when it considers matters happening in Colorado. Your order talked about social issues, not law enforcement issues. We're bringing you the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the nation. One of the things she's going to testify about is that fugitives from justice under her law are harbored in Nebraska, and she gets no help from Nebraska law enforcement to locate them, arrest them, and return them. She's going to testify that sexual assaults are committed in Nebraska by Nebraskans on South Dakota residents who report it to her office, and she gets no assistance at investigation of those matters. And she's going to testify that the chief crimes committed on her reservation are alcohol crimes. 90+% of the people incarcerated 200 meters from Whiteclay and her jail are there for alcohol-related crimes. The principal crimes prosecuted on the entire reservation are alcohol crimes. One of those crimes is the illegal sale of alcohol on the reservation, and that alcohol tends to come from our state. This is the only body in Nebraska with the authority to hear those things and regulate them, and for this body to ignore that evidence would, I think, be arbitrary and capricious.
I'm going to overrule the motion. I believe my order did say that law enforcement was applicable, and that, you know, the broader societal ills, as you stated, fetal alcohol syndrome, that kind of we can't affect. We don't take care of that. The order, I believe, I granted the motion eliminating in part, but I did say that, so that concerning law enforcement in and around Whiteclay would be admissible.
Mr. Ruth, you did not grant it in part. You sustained my motion in paragraph 4 of the motion in eliminate. Sustained.
I'm stating, I don't believe that her testimony falls within that, because she's not talking about societal, she's talking about the law enforcement, and that's part limited.
Part of my motion in paragraph 4 that you sustained, not in part, talks about the laws and regulations of the Ogallala Lakota Nation, the impact on jail and demand for jail services and law enforcement. Are you telling me that you're now changing your ruling on the motion to eliminate?
I think the hearing officer has spoken and is willing for quibbling with the ruling now.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I would, but as I said, I would allow all parties to make a record. I am under no illusion that whatever I do will be appealed by the non-prevailing party. So I'm going to rule, I believe, this fall under the issue of so I'm going to rule it, then you may continue on.
Is it your responsibility as the chief law enforcement of the Ogallala Lakota Nation to be aware of the sources of behavior that result in criminality?
I'm going to object. This calls for the presentation of evidence, testimony, or opinions by your expert regarding the Pine Ridge Reservation, the issues on the Pine Ridge Reservation and its inhabitants. It calls for testimony or evidence regarding the sale of alcohol on the Pine Ridge Reservation, the laws and regulations of the tribe, the statistics that may be related to laws and enforcement on the reservation, and the impact of the sale of alcohol on jail and demand for jail services and law enforcement.
I'm going to overrule the objection. As stated earlier, I believe this is, so long as it's limited to the evidence regarding law enforcement, I can't think of a better person rather than the Attorney General to give an overview of law enforcement on Pine Ridge Indian Reservation and how it connects and how it works or does not work with law enforcement in Whiteclay, which is the genesis of this hearing. So I'll overrule that.
You may answer his question.
Mr. Domina, would you ask that question again? There's a little bit of an overlap.
I will.
Thank you.
The question is it your responsibility to be aware of those locations from which behavior that results in criminality emanates?
Yes, of course, that's how we determine if we have jurisdiction over the crime. So, absolutely.
That's a daily responsibility?
Yes.
It involves a daily professional judgment?
Yes.
Madam Attorney General, would you tell us, please, to make sure we're clear, is the sale of alcohol on the reservation absolutely unlawful?
Yes.
I'm going to object to the presentation. This calls for the presentation of testimony, evidence, or opinions about the Pine Ridge Reservation, its issues, the sale of alcohol, and the demand for jail services and law enforcement on the reservation, which is irrelevant and which this commission has already ruled to be irrelevant.
Well, I think this falls under your motion eliminating subsection 5, which is 9. Mr. Steiner, you can shake your head and deny and all you want on that. Okay?
I'm reading my motion precisely.
What I'm saying is, I'm reading it as well, I'm making my decision, and we're going to go with that. If I'm wrong, appeal.
I'm going to keep making my
You keep making your objection.
Thank you.
I planned on doing 5, I didn't appreciate the head shake at me when I'm making my ruling.
I'm sorry.
If you want to make a continuing objection to that, you're more than
I'm
How
sorry,
should I state it so
Mr.
that I-
Whiteclay, the last part of your question because it was a cough.
If you wish to have a continuing objection to the testimony of this witness in regard to her job duties as Attorney General and how it pertains to how Whiteclay affects or does not affect her job duties, I am more than happy to grant you a continuing objection.
Okay, I'll state that objection then if that's all right.
Okay, continuing objection granted, no rule. But
No, I'm going to state my objection that you're going to allow to be continuing. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. I object on relevance because the presentation of any testimony, evidence, or opinions, lay or expert regarding the Pine Ridge Reservation, the issues of the Pine Ridge Reservation and its inhabitants, any link between the sale of alcohol and fetal alcohol syndrome, the laws or regulations of the Oglala Lakota Nation, statistics in any way related to the population of the Pine Ridge Reservation, the presentation of records of the Pine Ridge Hospital, the impact of the sale of alcohol on jail and demand for jail services, social services, and law enforcement are irrelevant. And if you'll allow me, I'll just refer to that same objection.
Yeah, okay, that was it. Ms. Donnelly. I'll overrule, but we can go to
Let's talk about a specific aspect of what happens then. You established that the sale of liquor on the reservation is illegal. Do you prosecute alcohol-related crimes, Madam Attorney General?
Yes, we do.
Same objection.
And what are those crimes?
Same objection. Also on foundation.
So we have a criminal provision specific to selling alcohol. So we have bootleggers that will get alcohol off the reservation, come on the reservation and then sell it. And also possession, just having alcohol. All of our child abuse and child endangerment provisions have elements that will include alcohol being present around children because of high rates of child sexual abuse happening when alcohol is present. The tribe took a hard stand on that. When alcohol is around children, there's a child endangerment charge that's associated with that. So those types of...
What about driving related?
Yes, the driving while intoxicated, driving under the influence, which is it ranges third and fourth highest crime on the reservation.
Are you aware of the incidents of criminal activity associated with alcohol prosecuted because it is identified and a charge is filed against someone who commits the alleged offense between the Nebraska state border and the southern boundary of the city of Pine Ridge, a distance of 1 mile? What is that information? What are the nature of the crimes and the quantity or magnitude of the crimes that occur in that mile?
Same objection, foundation, and it's a compound question.
It is a compounded question, but I'm going to overrule it, and I believe the witness.
So driving while intoxicated is one of the highest crimes that we see in that 1 mile stretch. That and a lot of eluding police, careless driving, reckless driving, those types of crimes.
And by eluding, you're using the word, a synonym would be evading, just to be sure that
Yes.
I'm hearing you correctly.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
And then also the transportation of alcohol. So that's one of our criminal sections. So we get a lot of reports into our dispatch that individuals are going into Whiteclay, purchasing alcohol, and then just coming right back into Pine Ridge. So
So the minute they cross the line, they've committed a crime.
correct.
Now, Madam Attorney General, can I ask you about something you referred to, and that is, you said something about sexual trafficking a moment ago.
Yes.
Do you prosecute that offense?
We do. Our tribe has a sex trafficking statute that prohibits any type of sexual trafficking, and my office does get reports of sexual trafficking happening in Whiteclay from white Nebraska residents and South Dakota residents crossing the line.
I'm going to assert the same objection, and I've asked for a continuing objection, and I ask that that testimony regarding Whiteclay specifically be stricken.
Mr. Conlon?
I think the same room. Is it your responsibility to investigate those charges?
Yes, to the extent that they happen in our jurisdiction. And even before that, I think it's absolutely important to understand that when you work in law enforcement and in my position, collaboration and communication with other jurisdictions is absolutely essential. We don't operate in bubbles. Just because there's a boundary, political boundary there, doesn't mean that your work stops and that you don't care what happens across that boundary. There's meth issues going on, drug issues. The legalization of marijuana in Colorado has affected all of us, from Nebraska through South Dakota, and those conversations have to happen, and they do with Pennington County, those state counties on the South Dakota side, but they do not happen with the Nebraska side, and like a line of objections that I've heard today is kind of evident why, but it's unfortunate because people are suffering for it, and our families are coming to us because they're getting no resolution from Nebraska law enforcement. So they come to my office looking for some type of help for their victims, for these victims of sexual assault, physical assault, murders. So it's perplexing to me that it's such a bubble type atmosphere, that there's no collaboration, there's no concern about the effects on these people, and the state of homelessness that Whiteclay causes. In our culture, homelessness was never a factor. We have such extended families, and those strong extended family feels right, or a close-knit family. But because of the alcohol sales in Whiteclay, it creates this ever-present state of homelessness for a population that wouldn't otherwise be homeless because they're able to access that alcohol. Because of sex trafficking and all of this type of crimes, there's that constant flow of money that's happening right in the town of Whiteclay.
I'm going to object to the foundation and relevance, and it is non-responsive to the question that was asked. And any implication that there's some crimes in Whiteclay needs to be supported by actual evidence, not just broad statements of there's a crime of this.
I'm going to overrule the objection. The statement was these are reports she's getting as the chief law enforcement officer for the tribe. She's not putting forth matters to prove those matters. And these are issues where the complaints are coming in, and she, as she stated earlier, lacks jurisdiction. These are outside her jurisdiction. She did go a little bit on. I'm going to caution the witness, to answer the question. As another lawyer, sometimes he gets questions, sometimes it's hard. But I would please caution you to answer the question that is asked.
I'd like to dissect just one specific crime in those terms for a moment, if I could, and that's sexual trafficking. The second word in that title is trafficking. Is that a crime that can have its genesis in one state and its conclusion in another?
Absolutely.
And is that what you find reported to your office on a regular basis?
Yes.
And is that what you're getting no support for from Nebraska law enforcement to investigate?
Correct.
And is the same also true of plans to commit other crimes which may originate in one state but be fulfilled in another?
Yes.
I'm going to object on the foundation and relevancy for the same reasons I did before, Mr. Root.
It's the same overrule.
I'm sorry, did you guys talk about something?
Yes.
I want to ask you, you mentioned homelessness. Is public intoxication a crime?
Yes.
Are you aware of a location on the reservation that is known by the general name Camp Justice?
Yes.
Would you tell the commission, first of all, physically where is Camp Justice?
It's right across the boundary between Nebraska and South Dakota. It's literally just right at the boundary. On the South Dakota side.
Adjacent, but
Correct.
on the South Dakota side?
Yes.
Is it also adjacent to what in Nebraska is Highway 87?
Yes.
That highway changes numbers when it gets to South Dakota, I think. And what is the number in South Dakota? Let's call it 87.
Yeah.
We know 87.
My mind is not blank.
All right. So this Camp Justice, What is it?
So it was a camp that started mostly because of the unresolved murders that happened in Whiteclay because of the alcohol sales, the crime that's committed there, that's happening, and people wanted some type of answers from the government.
So is it a place where people go?
Yes.
And how is it used?
In what sense?
What do people do there? Do they congregate there to make political statements? Do they live there because they're homeless? What happens at this Camp Justice just across the state border?
I think all of those things for political reasons. And like I said, it's hard to say that an Indian person would be homeless because they have such extended family, but it's a choice to be there to make that statement for them.
As the Attorney General, are you aware of circumstances that involve both the incarceration and release from incarceration of persons from the jail?
Yes.
And is the jail located in close proximity to Whiteclay also?
Yes, it's about 200 meters
So
from Whiteclay.
there's the law enforcement center and the jail?
Yes.
Are they adjacent to one another?
Yes.
Are they separate structures?
Yes.
As the chief law enforcement officer, are you aware of activities involving the movement, by foot or otherwise, of persons between Whiteclay and the jail?
Yes.
What do you know about that?
So I know that when individuals leave jail, and we have a protective custody provision where individuals can be taken in, if they're committing no other crime but being intoxicated, they'll be taken in for approximately 8 hours or until they become unintoxicated. They will zero, they say. They'll be taken in just for their own safety and then released. But it's always a question, and those that are getting released for bond or probation or whatever, if they're going to make that left to Whiteclay or go back right to Pine Ridge. And we'll see people get out of jail on probation, and immediately they're right back in Whiteclay drinking, and we have no authority to go over and get them, pick them up, even though we're in violation. We just have to wait till they come back across the line so that we can intervene and get them some help. And there's also individuals with active warrants that are on that side that we know need some type of intervention, but we're unable to do that.
Do you mean that fugitives from justice remain at Whiteclay?
Yes.
And you can't arrest them?
Correct.
And you're not getting help from Nebraska law enforcement?
Correct.
Now, let's just talk about the geography a bit so we're clear about this. I asked you earlier if the tribe has a nursing home that's south of the location of the licensees. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Obviously in Nebraska. And does your jurisdiction extend to the nursing home?
Well, it's on the Nebraska side, and that's the big legal question right now that the tribe's been raising. Our assertion is yes, it would on that tribal land, which would then involve federal jurisdiction as well because it's trust land.
So is it a non-contiguous piece of land?
Yes, and Nebraska's a public custody state, so there's a lot of different jurisdictional dynamics that are present right there in Whiteclay.
I just want to be sure that we appreciate that even if you have or assert jurisdiction over the nursing home, that doesn't mean you have continuous jurisdiction from the state line to the
Correct.
nursing home. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is there any claim whatsoever that you assert the jurisdiction over the locations of these licensee applicants here?
No.
One more subject, and then I'll be finished, and I appreciate your coming, and that is this. Is an element of the law enforcement responsibility that you have, Madam Attorney General, to enforce laws that are designed to assist in assuring that the public health is protected?
Yes.
And what are those laws that have particular public health focuses?
We object for the same reasons, relevance, and the reasons that I stated earlier.
You know, I'm going to sustain it on this one because this goes into Article 4 more for so outside law enforcement, more for so I'm going to sustain the objection.
May I make a narrative offer of proof, or would you rather have a brief question and answer offer?
I'll let you make a narrative offer for it.
I have offered to prove that if the Attorney General were permitted to answer these questions, she would testify that she enforces laws that are part of the tribal code that are parallel to many state and federal laws, designed to protect the public health as well as the public safety. Those include laws that are designed to curb and prevent the spread of venereal diseases, to prevent the spread of other communicable diseases and infections. She would also testify that her responsibilities include the enforcement of laws that are designed to curb the spread of specific alcohol-related illnesses, and that those laws cannot be enforced and are curbed in their enforcement for the reason she's already identified, which is principally that she gets no support from Nebraska law enforcement personnel. And with that, I have no further questions, and I thank you.
Mr. Schneider, cross-examination.
Thank you. Just a little further background for you. You said 5 years as the Attorney General for the tribe, is that right?
Nearly 5 years.
Okay. Did you grow up around there?
Yes, I grew up in Kyle, on the reservation.
Where's that located, the Pine Ridge?
It's about 45 miles east of Pine Ridge.
And how long did you live in Kyle?
Until I was in the 5th grade.
Did you move off the reservation then?
Yes, to Rapid City.
When was the first time, in Rapid City, were you still involved with issues on the reservation even as a youngster?
Yes, of course.
What type?
Well, families there are cultural, spiritual activities that happen throughout the year. So always engaged with the home community and my family there on the reservation.
Were you involved in issues with Whiteclay?
Growing up, yes. Always aware of Whiteclay's presence and what's happening.
I assume you graduated from high school, obviously, to get the advanced degrees that you have.
Yes.
And you did that in Rapid?
Yes.
And then you went away to Stanford?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
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 And then Minnesota for law school?
Yes.
How long were you gone when you were in college?
4 years for undergraduate, came back for 5 years of work, 3 years for law school, came back to work.
So the 5 years of working was as an engineer?
Yes.
And did you do that on the reservation?
Yes.
During that time, were you also paying attention to issues about Whiteclay?
Yes.
All right. And then law school and back to Rapid City?
Yes.
All right. So you've got a fairly long history of knowing about issues with Whiteclay?
Yes.
Is it safe to say that the issues surrounding Whiteclay have existed during that time frame that you've been paying attention to those issues since you were a young child?
Yes, and before.
These are not new issues.
No.
Are you aware of whether or not the retailers in Whiteclay, whether they're trying to change the location of their premises to sell alcohol?
I'm not aware.
As far as you know, they always been in the same premises?
Yes.
Are you aware of anything that would show that those premises are no longer suitable for the sale of alcohol in a physical sense? The building itself, is it suitable for the sale of alcohol?
Oh, I've never been in them, so
Okay.
I couldn't say.
You don't have any knowledge about that issue? But it's safe to say that the issues that you have discussed here today have been long-standing and haven't changed.
Correct.
And would that go back to, I'm not sure how old you are, but say 2000?
Yes.
Is it your contention here today that you have no interaction with Nebraska law enforcement?
I would say it's limited interaction.
Is it your contention that Nebraska law enforcement does not arrest individuals on warrants for both Nebraska and South Dakota?
I can't speak to what they do on Nebraska warrants, but like I said, my interaction is non-existent. There's
Well,
never collaboration.
I want to be clear. Are you saying that Nebraska law enforcement does not arrest individuals on South Dakota warrants?
On tribal warrants, they do not.
Is it your contention that Nebraska law enforcement does not transport individuals from Nebraska onto the reservation?
They do not.
no assistance whatsoever.
In certain instances, they do when there's involved a chase. I know that our police force will communicate on certain instances, and if Sheridan County is able to respond, then a lot of times they'll authorize our police to cross the state boundary into the Nebraska side if it's a chase, a high-speed chase. So there's that interaction that happens.
Is it your testimony that law enforcement, Nebraska law enforcement, does not transport people to South Dakota to the reservation?
I can't speak to that specifically.
Are you aware of a vote, assume you are since you're the chief law enforcement officer, of the population of the reservation to approve the sale of alcohol?
I'm aware of a vote that took place, yes.
Was that in 2014?
Yes.
And did the people of the reservation vote to allow the sale of alcohol?
It's a contested result. So it was never approved by tribal council formally because there were many challenges to the actual voting process of access to voting. So it was never officially approved.
I understand that. Did the vote, 52 to 48% of the population voted to approve the sale of alcohol on the reservation?
Those were the results, yes.
One of the delays in implementing that is that the tribal council has yet to adopt an alcohol code, for lack of a better word. The Law and Order Committee hasn't done that yet. Is that true?
I think there are multiple reasons why it hasn't happened.
I stated that as a question. One of them is that the Law and Order Committee hasn't enacted regulations. Is that true?
Correct.
I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Any questions for your commissioners?
Would you be more specific on the area when you refer to Nebraska law enforcement? Are you referring to the Sheridan County Sheriff, Nebraska State Patrol? Who directly are you? Make more definite and certain.
Sheridan County Sheriff.
I have two small questions. The first, you're not licensed in Nebraska, are you?
No.
So although the tribal prohibition against public intoxicating, you want to be aware that it's not a crime in Nebraska, or are you aware of that fact?
I'm aware that that's not.
Second issue is, maybe because Mr. Schneider got close to it, and you always worry about asking somebody how old they are. Were you involved in the Attorney General's office when there was an attempt made for a cross-deputization agreement between Nebraska and the tribe?
No.
So you know anything why that cross-deputization agreement did not come forward?
I do not.
Unfortunately, I was around, I remember that, and so I was going to see what happened. I don't have a question. Birch, what?
I do have a question, that is, this vote on the reservation contested this thing. Is it still not the policy of the reservations that it is a drive reservation?
Yes, we're still a driver.
And would this have returned back had that not been contested?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Can you redirect Mr. Donnelly?
Just a very few questions. You mentioned tribal warrants in your answer to a cross-examination question. Is it your responsibility to prosecute the crimes that occur on the reservation?
Yes.
And is that responsibility exclusive of prosecution by the state attorney general? That is to say, do you have jurisdiction there, and the attorney general's office defers those prosecutions to you?
No.
Does the attorney general of South Dakota prosecute crimes that violate your criminal code?
No.
And if you prosecute under your criminal code, is it true that the attorney general does not hold that same person in additional jeopardy by an additional